I'm Woody Huffines. I'm the NerdsToGo in McKinney and Frisco, Texas, and this is Tech for the Untechnical. It's end of Windows 7 lifetime. So will my computer run Windows 10? If you listened last time, you may have heard some of the reasons that you need to upgrade your computer or get off of Windows 7 and move to a new operating system. And the biggest reasons were security reasons, because you're going to lose the updates. You're going to lose the ability to keep the computer protected. There's another one that I really didn't mention that I'll just briefly mention here, and that's just to be a good internet citizen. Think of another virus. Think of the Zika virus borne by mosquitoes. If one of your neighbors never cut their grass all summer and their grass got to be knee high, and it was a breeding ground for mosquitoes, it would increase your chances of getting the Zika virus just because your neighbor wasn't doing what they should do to take care of their business. And from the internet perspective, having old unpatched machines that can get infected and then become vectors of infection for other machines because somebody's running a crypto miner or a botnet or whatever on your computer. It's just another reason. Sidebar, but just thought I'd mention that. So now you're convinced that you need to put Windows 10 on your Windows machine because Windows 7 is losing update in January 14th, 2020. Will your computer run Windows 10? Is it capable? Well, the short answer is really, if the computer that you're using you bought with Windows 7 as the operating system that was default installed from the store, it's probably time for you to get a new computer anyway. The way computers get better, the capabilities, the curve of improvement on computers means that a computer that's 4 or 5 years old is really, really old in terms of technology terms. You can get a lot faster, a lot better, a lot more reliable computer now. The other thing that you need to worry about is if you decide to update the computer that you got, that there are components that are the components that most often fail in computers. I mean, over the long term, it's hard drives and it's power supplies that go away on a computer. So if you spend a lot of money to upgrade the computer that you've got, or spend a little money to upgrade the computer you got, you may be putting new tires on a 1956 Buick. It's not something that is going to fix all the problems that you may have in the future. So if your power supply goes out, and then you got a new power supply, and the power supply is, in the case of Dell, for example, or proprietary, and sometimes hard to find. So anyway, if you have an older computer, it came with Windows 7, it might be an idea to just get a new one. I'm just saying. We can help you with that at NerdsToGo, but I'm just saying. What are the requirements that you need to run Windows 10? Well, you need, and this is the requirements, 2 gig of RAM, a 2 gigahertz processor. You need 32 gigabytes of open memory for a 64-bit machine. You need DivX 9 as a display driver, and that's a list of things that, if you're watching Tech for the Untechnical, probably didn't mean anything to you. So let me cut to the chase, and you can do the 2 or 3 simple things you can do. The first thing you can do is try the Is My Computer Ready for Windows 10 facility on Microsoft. I'll put the link below where you can go in and it'll look at your computer and determine whether or not your computer will run Windows 10. I've seen it both ways. I have seen it say that it will when it won't, and I've seen it say that it won't when it will. But it's supposed to look at your computer and make sure that you have all the basic foundational elements in your computer that will run Windows 10. That's one way of doing it. That's the Microsoft way of doing it. The second way of doing it is go on to the manufacturer for your computer's website, HP, Dell, Asus, whatever, Acer, and enter the model number of your computer, or the asset tag number in Dell's case on your computer, into their database. And they will come back and tell you whether your computer is capable of Windows 10 or not. Again, I've seen it work both ways, where they think you are capable and you're not, and they think you're not capable and you are. The issue is a thing called drivers, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Or you can just look, and the baseline, the things that you need to worry about is, do you have 4 gig of RAM? We really recommend 8. It's just so much better if you have 8 gig of RAM. You need at least a 250 gigabyte hard drive. I would suggest that a 500 gigabyte will give you some headspace and tolerance in the future. and you need the processor needs to be at least a 2 gigahertz processor. Now, if you don't use the Microsoft Am I Ready for Windows 10 website, or you don't use your website for the specific manufacturer, you haven't entered the asset tag or the asset number or the model number, depending on which those things that your website needs. The other thing you can do is on your desktop, there's a picture of a computer and it says My Computer in Windows 7. If you right click on that icon and drop down and look at properties, the properties will list the things in that computer that you have. What's the gigabytes of RAM, what kind of processor do you have, what kind of hard drive do you have, and it'll give you the information that you can go enter on the manufacturer website or the Windows website to see if you're Windows 10 ready. It's a crapshoot. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and you ask why? Well, just a minute ago, I talked about drivers, and that's why sometimes it's a problem. Along with an operating system in a computer, you've got the little pieces of code that are called drivers, and the drivers allow the hardware and the software to talk to each other. The motherboard has just the base motherboard. Then you've got a bunch of stuff on the motherboard that's pieces of hardware that kind of relate to the physical world, like the display driver. Like if you have a graphics card, you got a graphics card in the machine, there's a driver that allows the graphics card and the operating system to talk, or the USB ports, or the network interface card, or, well, there's just a bunch of things, the sound system. And the drivers that you have are specific to the operating system and that individual piece of hardware. So if sometimes those manufacturers over time will stop putting out drivers that allow an operating system to talk to their piece of equipment. And it may be that they've gone out of business, it may be that they got bought by somebody else, it may be that they're just tired of messing with putting drivers out for stuff that's 10 years old or 8 years old or 7 years old. Just because your computer's 5 years old doesn't mean that the pieces of hardware that you in it are just as new as your computer. They could have been putting in pieces of hardware, interface cards or graphics cards that were 3 or 4 years old at the time you bought your computer 5 years ago. So when I say something that's 8 or 9 years old, it's entirely possible. So if they're not putting out a driver and you install Windows 10 as an operating system, if Windows 10 as an operating system doesn't have a driver, little piece of software, to allow it to talk to the network interface card, you may not have wireless, or you may not have sound, or your graphics card may not work. And that's the issue that you run into when you're dealing with a software upgrade where the drivers are a problem and you have incompatibilities. So that's where you'll run into problems. So the first step, if you decide that you're going to run to Windows 10, is probably buy a new computer. If you really don't want to buy a new computer, and you really don't want to buy a new computer, and I understand that, then use the Windows Update tool or the software update tool for your specific computer. There'll be links in the description below, and you can see if you're compatible and it's ready to go. And you can find those pieces of information out by right-clicking on My Computer on your home screen, go down to Properties, and it'll list all the stuff about the computer. And you're looking for at least 4 gig of memory. I think you should have 8. You're looking for a 2 gigahertz processor. An i3 dual core is probably better. And you need 250 gig hard drive, and then the DIVX9 drivers so that you have a good graphics card. If you have any questions, give us a call at NerdsToGo here in McKinney, and we'll certainly help you out. Appreciate you joining us. This is Woody Huffines. I'm the NerdsToGo in McKinney and Frisco, Texas. This is Tech for the Untechnical. This information is helpful to you. Hit the subscribe button below, ring the notification bell, and when we talk next time about how to upgrade your computer to Windows 10, you'll get a notification. Thanks for joining us.